So on this video, I decided to record all natural, no makeup, no eyelashes, no hair, just something different or whatever. So don't get confused. I'm still the same person in all the other videos. And another thing I want to put in there that, these videos are not recorded in order. I recorded sometime in the middle of the night. Sometime I recorded in the middle of the day, early in the morning. Whenever the thought came to me about a particular topic is when I decided to record. So just make sure you watch all the videos. I promise you all of them go together hand in hand. Please stay tuned. Like I said, watch every video. Come along with me on this journey. And I hope that by the end of this journey, you will be so blessed and encouraged and just motivated if you find yourself in any of these particular scenarios or just what I decided to share. If you find yourself inside of any of it, if you identify with any of it, I just pray that these videos will bless you. So as I was reviewing all of the other videos that I have not posted yet, I saw somewhere where I needed to kind of go back to a particular time in life to take this journey full circle. So I was like, okay, I need to back up. So I need to go and do another video, but I need to title it Living with Heartbreak Part 1. Because another video that I recorded that you haven't seen yet, you'll probably be like, well, how do we get here without her explaining stuff from previous years or early childhood? So I decided to go back. I decided to go all the way back to where I believe I experienced the ultimate heartbreak whatsoever. I know this whole channel is about showing you how to get through divorce, how you can live through divorce. It doesn't matter what comes your way inside divorce. If you hang on to God, trust Him in everything, He will carry you through. But I think it's so important to show that divorce is not the only heartbreak that some of us experience. And also to show that, oftentimes when we go through things in life, we think that we're going through them because we have done something so offensive to God, or we've done something and now God is punishing us or whatever. But I know that everything that we endure in this life, it's not necessarily a punishment. I know for me, I know everything that I've had to endure, everything that I've had to suffer through, all of that was to push me closer to God. It was to strengthen my relationship with God. It wasn't to turn me away from Him, even though the multitude or the level of situations and trials, it could have easily done that. But I think because of the way I was taught from a young child, what we go through in life, everything serves a purpose and everything is to drive us to God. Not everything that we go through is us suffering because we were an evildoer or we sowed some type of discord in someone else's life and now God is allowing us to go through this and that. Not everything we go through. Yes, there are times that we will suffer as an evildoer, but everything we go through in life, everything we have to go through, tests, trials, whatever we may be faced with, everything is not because we have done something wrong. And I think that's so important to, be reminded of, because it's easy to go there and we start questioning God. Well, God, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do to, have to go through this year after year? And God is like, you didn't do anything. You're my child. I'm trying to produce certain things in you. And because you're my child, I know what I have equipped you to be able to handle. So this is a part of your test. Everything that I've taught you, everything that I've shown you, everything that I've ministered, everything that you've learned in the Word, you are equipped to go through whatever test, whatever trial that this life may bring. Now, it does not always feel like that. When these tests and trials come, they catch us off guard, but nothing catches God by surprise. Everything that we go through, it went by God first. So I think where I really want to go inside of this particular video, like I said, dealing with heartbreak. My first, I would say, the heartbreak of all heartbreaks was when I lost my mother. And when I tell you there is nothing in my life that I have experienced that hurt worse than that. Yes, divorce did a number. Divorce took me through some emotions I didn't even know existed. It took me through some feelings that I never even thought of. But the ultimate heartbreak that I have experienced in my life is when I lost my mother. Nothing I have been through since 1994 has touched that season when I had to go through that. I lost my mother on December 26th, 1994. And this is why I'm also glad I don't have on any makeup, because I might cry in this particular one. But I lost my mom December 26th, 1994. Yes, the day after Christmas, I lost my mother. And it caught me by surprise. I was not prepared. I didn't see it coming. And I don't think none of us can really prepare to lose a loved one, but you know, sometimes you kind of see, well, oh, they've been sick this long time, or they've been battling with this, or they have this drug addiction or whatever. I didn't see it. My mom, what I can remember, I was 14 years old. What I can remember, it was around September. I was getting ready to go to a youth conference or something we was going to, like in the woods, some type of cabin thing. We were going away with the youth department at my church at the time, which was Greater Bethel. We were going away for the weekend. I remember my mom being sick, and I really didn't know. I thought it was just, oh, you know, a cold, allergy, whatever. That's what I was thinking it was. But I noticed that she had been sick a few weeks prior to that, and I didn't see her getting better. So I went on this trip and I came back, and my mom was still sick. So over the next couple of weeks, I saw a decline. And around December or the end of November, she ended up going in the hospital, or right before that, she had some doctor's appointments, and they determined it to be walking pneumonia. I had never heard of it at the time, had no idea what that was, but that's what they said it was, or that's what it was told to me, that it was walking pneumonia. So I was like, okay, so that's all it is. She'll get well or whatever. About November, the end of November, I remember my mom going into the hospital. Did not know why, but when she went, I heard she had this surgery to remove a tumor out of one of her shoulders. And growing up, I had never seen my mom in the hospital. I had seen my mom go through various sicknesses or whatever, but nothing major to where I saw her in a hospital or anything like that. But she went in for this surgery, and I remember her coming home December 1st. I remember her coming home, but the person that came home was not the mother that I had remembered. My mom, I do remember going to visit her in the hospital before she came home. She was kind of out of it, so I just thought it was the medication or whatever. And I was like, okay, so when she comes home, you know, everything will be different. But when she came home, she was not the mother that I had remembered, not growing up with. It was just something different. And as a 14-year-old, I could not put it together. Like, well, what's going on? What is this? And I remember, let's see, I'm getting teary-eyed, so I'm glad I don't have on any makeup. So if y'all see me cry, know that this is a touchy subject, very sensitive. Even after all these years, it's still really, 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 really hard to talk about. And I remember she was coming home this particular day, and the house that we lived in, if you ever been to that neighborhood, or if you're from West Palm Beach, Florida, or Riviera Beach, Florida, 34th and S Avenue, you know, our house was right on the corner. My bedroom was the bedroom in the front of the house, but on the corner. We were on the corner lot. So all the traffic, and if you know my neighborhood, people came through with their music thumping, and, you know, the windows vibrating, and it was noisy. So her coming home from the hospital, that was her room. At first, but we switched rooms, and my room was in the back of the house. I'll take that back. My room was in the back, her room was in the front. So because of all the noise and her coming home recovering from a surgery that I'm thinking just is a tumor in her shoulder, we switched rooms. So she moved to my room in the back of the house, and I stayed in that room. But like I said, it was not the mother that I had remembered. My mom, she wasn't talkative. She, you know, was very limited on words. So I was like, okay, so it's still the medication. It hasn't wore off, because, you know, I'm the baby. Of course she knows who I am, and, you know, this is me. This what's going on. And so I don't know. I couldn't get used to that. And I would just sit in the living room, and I would just watch as different ones came to care for her. And I'm like, what is going on? So the days and weeks went on, and we were approaching Christmas, and it definitely did not feel like Christmas. because I didn't have my mom, because my mom was all into Christmas, you know, had nice Christmas trees, gifts for everybody under the tree, meal, a spread of food. It just did not feel like that. And because I hadn't been able to have like the normal conversations with her, it just did not feel like Christmas. I remember many days going in the room and she didn't even know who I was. She would just look and I'd be like, Ma, it's me, it's me. And she would look and she would say a few words or whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, really? Like, she doesn't know who I am. And I'm like, oh my God, what kind of medication did they give to her that even after weeks now, she does not recognize her own child? She does not know it's me. She's not able to hold a conversation. And I would just go in the room and I would lay across the bed, even though she wasn't saying a whole lot. She would say stuff, but it wasn't my mom. And we were going into Christmas, and I remember it was either my sister or my cousin. They were asking me to, you know, do what I had done every year, write down what I wanted for Christmas, make this list or whatever, and, you know, don't worry, you will still have a nice Christmas even though your mom isn't feeling well. So I remember writing out this Christmas list, and even writing the Christmas list, it was tough because I'm like, well, I know my mom isn't going to buy this stuff, and it's not the same. And I was not in the Christmas spirit because I didn't have my mom in her right mind. And I remember Christmas Day. It was the most different time I had ever experienced. It was a Christmas like never before. I wasn't in the mood for gifts. I had gifts. They were outside playing, you know, up and down the street. But I wanted to stay in the house close to wherever my mom was. And I just really was not in the mood. And I remember, I'm not sure exactly how it got to this point, but I remember her health kind of deteriorating at a faster pace. And a friend of our family, her husband, I believe, was a nurse, or, you know, he was in the medical field, and they were trying to, I don't even remember why this was done, but I remember them putting her in a car and making her think they were driving her to the doctor or something. It doesn't make sense. Now that I'm saying it out loud, and now I'm thinking, like, what was the purpose of that if the car wasn't moving? But they were putting her in the car and they were talking to her. I don't know, trying to calm her down. I don't really know what it was, but I remember them putting her in the car and trying to talk to her. And you know, they were waiting on the doctor to call back. And I think my sister had reached out to the doctor, hey, whatever y'all have given her is not working or is having this adverse effect. Something is going on here. And I remember that Christmas night, you know, I went to bed just feeling like it wasn't really Christmas. It was different. The next morning, woke up. I believe my grandmother, you know, did breakfast. My grandmother was in her late 80s maybe at the time. My grandmother would still get up, cook breakfast, do whatever she had to do. But because she was so elderly, she could not care for my mother on her own, because it was really me, my mom, and my grandma that lived in the house. But because of the care my mom needed, or how her health was declining so rapidly, other family members had to come in. But I remember my grandmother, you know, doing breakfast, cooking or whatever, and I went in to eat. Still really wasn't in the Christmas spirit at all. I had all of these gifts. They didn't mean anything because I really wanted my mother more than I wanted the gifts. I wanted the time that I had been sharing with my mom all of these years, or the 14 years. I wanted that more than I had the gifts or whatever. And I remember putting on my Walkman. Some of y'all kids out there may not know what a Walkman is, but at that time it was a CD player. It was a CD player, a portable CD player. Just had them on nonstop all day. The kids came over. They were outside playing again, outside on bikes, you know, showing off the new Christmas toys. But I didn't want to go outside. I wanted to be wherever my mom was, wherever she was at. I wanted to be close by, even if I couldn't be in the room all the time with her, either because she was sleeping or if it was just making me sad that she didn't know who I was. I still wanted to be in the house close to her. But I remember it was about probably 7 o'clock, around 7 o'clock. My grandmother, if you know my grandmother, or you knew my grandmother rather, my grandmother was a huge Wheel of Fortune person. Every night at 7 or 7:30, it don't matter what was on the TV. At that particular time, you had to turn on to Wheel of Fortune for her, and everybody in the house had to stop and watch Wheel of Fortune. And I remember sitting in the rocking chair and watching this game show. And I will never forget, I could play this moment in my head minute by minute. If there was enough time in the day, I could tell you everything that happened from that moment. I remember rocking in the rocking chair, and my cousin Gloria was there at the house that particular day, taking care of my mom, and she ran out of the room. From my room, remember we switched rooms, so I moved to my mom's room in the front, and she moved to my room, which was in the back of the house, and she ran out. She was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, call 911. So I'm like, for what? Like, I'm the child, I'm sitting there, I'm stuck. Why? She was like, your mom stopped breathing. In that moment, it's like I moved in slow motion. I grabbed the phone, I called 911, and when the operator said, what's your emergency? I was in a child's voice, very nonchalant. I think I was more so in shock that this was happening. I said, my mom stopped breathing. They asked me my address and all of that, gave them the address. They came to the house, paramedics, fire trucks, the whole nine came to the house. They rushed in. But before they got there, I tried to go, when I hung up from 911, I tried to go and look in the room to see what's going on, but they wouldn't let me see. They was like, no, go sit down, go back out in the living room or whatever. And I'm like, why? What's going on? You said she stopped breathing. Let me see. Let me come and see what's going on. This is my mama. So I couldn't go in there, but somebody moved. I forgot who was in the doorway. Somebody moved, and I glimpsed in the room, and I saw my mom in my bed, and it looks like she was already gone. There was so much going on in the house at that time. It was, I don't want to say chaotic, but I think it was so much panicking going on because she's not breathing. So I go outside and I sit down on the front step and I just start crying. I'm boohoo crying. I don't know what's going on, but I know what I just saw. And one of my friends who actually went to school with me at the time lived on the next corner, and she heard all of the sirens and everything going on, and she came around the corner and sat outside with me. She didn't ask anything. She came and sat on the step with me, put her arm around me as I just cried. I'm boohoo crying. By this time, the neighborhood, we were very well known in our neighborhood. Like I said, our neighborhood was like a family. We all grew up together. Everybody raised each other's kids. We stayed the night at each other's houses, birthday parties, everything we shared together. So by this time, everybody's coming out of their house, trying to see what's going on. And I think the first thing that went through people's mind was, oh, they were there for my grandmother because my grandmother was elderly or whatever. But they were not. They were there for my mother. And a few minutes went by, and the paramedics, I got up and I went in the house, and I saw them moving her onto the gurney to put inside the ambulance. But they were moving so slow. They got her in the paramedics. They started driving, and they went in the opposite direction, which didn't say a whole lot to me then, but as we all got in the car and we were driving, it's like something in me, after I've already seen her in the room, and something in me has already let me know she's gone. But then when they get in the paramedics, they go the opposite direction of St. Mary's, and then they make a U-turn to go the correct direction, and they didn't have the sirens on. To me, that already said to me, she was gone. So we get to the hospital. By this time, so many of my family members know what's going on. They all rush to St. Mary's. We're sitting in this waiting room. We're out in the regular waiting room. And then this nurse comes and she moves us to this private room. The private room was really, legally, I'm assuming the private room was only for like about 4 or 5 people. But it had to be about 10 of us packed up, maybe even more, packed up in this room. And I remember this young nurse kept coming in, and she was giving us an update, but it was still something in me. And I know they do this every day. They tell families bad news every day, so they probably have no emotion in it whatsoever at any point, not just for us, but this may be how they are every day. So I'm watching this nurse. She comes in, But she's giving us these updates. And she's like, oh, you know, they had to put her on oxygen and they're trying to stabilize her, and you know, they're still working or whatever, but you know, someone will be back in with the update. So a few minutes later, somebody came in with the update, and the doctor was saying he really didn't know, you know, what caused all of it. And he asked my sister questions that I didn't know about medication and all of that. I didn't know any of that. Again, I'm 14 years old, didn't have a clue what was really happening. So we sat in there and we're quiet. By that time, my pastor, Reverend Henley, had made his way over there and came and sat down in the room with us, and you know, was ministering to us, trying to uplift us, and you know, reminding us that inside of everything, God has a purpose, God has a plan. You know, if this is her time, you know, just be prepared. You know, just, you know, ministering to us to keep our minds, I don't know, not at ease, but just try to bring some comfort. And I remember probably 20-30 minutes later, this nurse comes back in the door. And when I tell you the words that the lady said to me, I hear those words so clear in my head. I never knew this lady's name, never got her name, no, don't know anything about her. But the words that she came the last time she came in this room, I don't want to say they haunt me, but I hear those words every time I think of this story. Like I say, I can talk about the story. I can give you minute by minute play of this entire night. But she came in, and it's like, I knew it was it. She came in, and in this very soft voice or whatever, she said, I'm not sure. We really don't know what happened tonight. We don't really know. We don't have all of what we need, the data or information, whatever they use to kind of determine the cause of death or whatever. She said, we don't really know what happened, but her time has expired. And it was like everything stopped. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, did she just say expired as in like she's really gone? But it was like no emotion in it, and I lost it. And I remember, like, when she said her time has expired, it was like this ton of bricks had hit everybody in the room. And I remember sitting in this chair, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was my cousin Yolanda and my cousin Shelly. They were sitting on the arms of the chair, and I just started crying, just boohoo crying. And they were sitting on the arms of the chair, and their tears were falling down on me. And but something in me knew when we left that house, she was gone. Because I also saw, she was not moving, but I saw this, what I'm told is like this final stage of death, when people start to foam at the mouth. I saw that, and I'm like, what is that? But I later found out when people foam at the mouth, when they go into like cardiac arrest or whatever. I'm not no medical person, so the terminology may be wrong, but that's almost like a sign that the person is gone. But I remember just crying and crying and crying. I'm asking God, why would you do this? Why, God? Why her? And then in the moment, it could have even been a selfish thing, because I was like, God, why my mama? Why you didn't choose somebody else's mama? My mama in the church. My mama is a pastor. She serves you. She lives, you know, right? She lives pleasing unto you. Why would you choose her? All of this stuff is going in my head, and my sister is in there. I remember my sister was on the floor just screaming and hollering. It's everybody in there. Nobody was in there without tears in their eyes. And my pastor was in there trying to console and comfort. And as the nurse gave this news, she just walked back out the door like, okay, next family. But like I said, I know this is something they do every day. They probably can't get attached to families like that, but it was like no emotion, and that hurt so bad. But just to hear those words, her time has expired, oh my gosh, that to this day, that just brings tears to my eyes. And I'm not going to cry, but it is still difficult to talk about it. Even now, and I think we're 26 years in, it's still hard to talk about it without getting teary-eyed. And even in this segment or this video, this is the most that I have ever talked about this public or whatever. I talk to, you know, close friends, family, and share bits and pieces, but it's hard to talk about because it is so sensitive. It was so so hurtful. It was so, everything you could think of, it was that. And so I remember we finally gathering ourselves, and the lady asked if we wanted to see her. And at first I was like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to see her like that. And I was like, you know, you better see her, because when you get to a funeral, it's not going to be the same person that you remember. So I gathered up enough strength or whatever. I was able to contain myself for a little bit, and they took us in this room. It was, and it was so much happening at St. Mary's that night. I think there had been a shooting or something in Riviera, and there was another 2 or 3 families back here in these different rooms, and their loved ones had passed. So it was a crazy scene there. So we went in this room, and she was in this bed, and all of these tubes and wires, everything was hooked up to her. And I remember just crying over her, like, oh my gosh, like, this is really happening. Like, I'm never going to see her again. And I had so many questions for God. Why was my biggest thing? Why would you do this? Why would you take her away from me? My dad already wasn't really a huge part of my life. He was in and out. I did know who he was, and I did spend time with him, but it was never the time like I spent with my mom. So I just remember just laying over her, just crying. And, you know, eventually we had to leave, and that ride back home, it was so silent in the house. I mean, the car. It was, nobody was talking. Everybody was still kind of shocked, and I don't even remember how I got home. I was in somebody's car. And I was just silent. Like, my whole life was flashing before my eyes. Like, how am I supposed to live with this person that I've had every day of my life? How am I supposed to go on? What am I supposed to do? Who am I going to live with? All of this stuff is going through my head. Like, Lord, what now? And I remember we got back to the house, and by this time, I thought there was a lot of people there before we went to the hospital. Oh, it was like 3 or 4 times that many people at our house when we came back. It was cars lined all up and down 34, all up and down East Avenue. There was an empty lot across the street from my house. It was cars packed. There was so many people at our house, so many people in the house, so many people outside, and everybody just devastated, and just trying to console each other and asking, well, what happened, this or that, and like, oh my gosh, where's Mishka? How is she doing? How is she holding up? It was, but everybody was just coming together and just trying to console. And I remember I went in the house, and I just sat there in a state of shock. I didn't say anything. I remember by that time, my pastor had made it back to our house. And I remember when we first went back in, we told my grandmother, because she didn't go to the hospital with us. She stayed home. And when I remember them going in to tell her that she didn't make it, and my grandmother just started crying, and she was like, oh, you know, just devastated, because at that time, I think my grandmother had maybe 3 or 4 kids left. I think my grandmother had maybe a total of 8, and she had already lost a bunch of her kids already, and now here goes another child that she's outliving. And so she just was in a state of shock, just like everybody else. And my pastor came in, and he, you know, he opened the Bible and took us to some scriptures to comfort us. He prayed with us, and, you know, let us know, hey, if you need anything, the church is here. And at that time, my mom was also a pastor of a church, so her church members were there, and they were devastated. It was people just, you know, all over the place crying, and, you know, hey, if y'all need anything, let us know. And then I remember right before I decided that I was going to go and stay. At that time, it was like our youth leader, Miss Beverly, and she was out. I was really close to her, and also happened to be my pastor's daughter-in-law. And I think when she found out, she came over to the house and was like, hey, if you want to come to my house tonight, you know, pack up your stuff and, you know, come over there. And she gathered some of my friends to come over and stay the night with me over there, as we try to get through this night. And I remember right before I left, I'm telling you, this night I could play minute by minute. And how did I keep answering the phone, or I'm the one on the phone? I remember right before I was getting ready to go, the hospital called. And the lady on the phone, like I said, I know these people do this every day. So the tone or the lack of emotion, it irks you, but this is their job. This is what they do every day. They probably can't cry over everybody that they lose, but as the family or the family that is grieving, it's hard. So I answered the phone, and the lady asked, and because I don't know where my sister was at the time, probably was outside or consoling somebody, something. And they asked, who do you want the body to go to? And then I lost it again, because again, here I'm being hit again that this is for real. She is gone for real. She is not coming back. Here it is, these people. I've had to call 911 to come because she stopped breathing. I go to the hospital. She's gone for real. Now the hospital is calling and asking me who do we want the body to go to. We just got home. We don't even know that yet. We're trying to deal with how we're supposed to live the next minute without our glue. The person who has been there for all of us, and especially for me, that my mom was my glue. That's my rock, my right hand, my left hand, my everything. And you're asking me, where's her? I was like, ma'am, I do not know. But if you give us some time, we will get the information to you. And I was just devastated on the phone. I'm crying. I'm like, oh my God. I was just like, lady, do you know my whole world just came crashing down? Life as I knew it was different from that moment. And I'm like, I don't know where her body going. I don't know. I don't know what the next 5 minutes gonna look like. Because up until now, this person that I've always had in my life was no longer gonna be there. And so that's why I say that heartbreak, that level of heartbreak does not compare to anything that I've ever had to endure in life. I don't care what I dealt with inside of a marriage, inside of the divorce. I don't care the level of betrayal, the level of infidelity, the level of people talking about me behind my back and smiling in my face, the level of stabs in the back by people that I thought was close to me. None of that touches what I went through during that season. Yeah, all of that hurt. All of that was devastating. All of it really made me feel some type of way. But when I tell you, none of that touches that season at all. It does not. And I think I had to go through that season in life to see that no matter what I was going to go through in life, the hardest season of my life, I got through it. But I got through it only because God. Not because anybody else, but because of how I had been raised in God, the confidence and the relationship and the trust that I had in God. That was the only way. And God showed me that even while dealing with divorce, remember that season that you thought you could not live through. The closest person to you, the person you never saw in a million years, having to live without. Remember that season. Remember how devastating it was. Remember how you almost didn't make it through that season. Remember the thoughts that you had. Remember all of that. But you got through it. Remember when you did not see years later. You couldn't see the next day. But because I was there, I as in God, because I was there with you, because I carried you, this is why you made it through. And this is why all the tests and trials in your life that you go through, you have the ability to get through it because I am there.